Hi, my name is Tori Manley, and I would like to reiterate the TED Talk created by Stuart Oda called Are Indoor Vertical Farms the Future of Agriculture? Today, we have a problem with the population in urban cities growing dense and space being scarce for human use. Stuart mentioned that we have to grow more food today than we've ever had to grow in human history, approximately 1,000 years or so, which I believe is quite convincing. Limited space is becoming more common worldwide, and Stewart believes the conventional way to grow food horizontally on land is inefficient due to the amount of food needing to be grown out of the land with the amount of space is needed. Global climate change also affects the water, sunlight intensity, and habitable conditions for specific crops that people want to grow. Resource availability is affected by the amount of food needed to sustain a population, especially in developing countries. Although there are many benefits to indoor vertical farming, such as space savvy alternatives, it can also affect food prices. Although this seems like an efficient way to grow produce, it is also costly due to the energy needed to sustain the farm. This affects everyday consumers that shop at these markets. Stewart says we can combat these issues by creating energy efficient indoor vertical gardens such that use optic cables that can bring indirect sunlight during the day. He also mentioned energy efficient equipment such as LED full spectrum light. This means that artificial light that is used for these indoor vertical farms should have the same effects for growing produce as the sun. Stewart mentioned that the utilization of underused space in urban settings, such as restaurant corners, the corners of your house, or like a big wall, can lower the demand for big agriculture food production and thus reduce the cost of purchasing produce grown in an indoor controlled vertical farm. This new way to grow food is incredibly space savvy and an attractive alternative for today's economy and its densely populated urban cities. From what I understand, it is also essential to regulate the number of resources put into growing produce for human consumption. People in urban communities can save resources in vertical farming. Vertical farming can free up space that people can utilize for other means, such as housing individuals or reforestation, instead of using large amounts of land for food production. Conventional food production is also very intensive and relies on the weather. With vertical farming, everything is indoor and controlled, and we can save resources. The history of this problem, the problem which is growing enough food for everyone, is more profound than the issue of vertical gardening itself. Vertical, Vertical farming is a new concept developed for primarily urban countries or areas with a dense population and smaller amounts of space to work with to grow fresh produce. Stewart is advocating for space conscious farming in small communities, in urban communities, so people can have readily available fresh produce and utilize forgotten space such as corners of hotels and underutilized space in office work settings. It advocates for readily available food for all communities. It also supports the use of fewer resources going into producing food. I know that growing your produce outside is labor intensive, it is strenuous, and relies entirely on the weather. But if an individual can invest sustainable resources and energy sources, such as solar, then vertical indoor farming can be attainable. However, it is costly. Therefore, I recommend that a whole community can fund these sort of indoor vertical agriculture spaces by the government in underprivileged areas or by companies that can afford fresh produce from vertical gardening. That being said, a community can work together to create a vertical garden for the said community. Another recommendation that does not have to be an indoor vertical garden is that is reliant on artificial means is a type of vertical garden that is not indoor reliant. It is more weather reliant and it is considered a type of vertical gardening. And what you can do is you can create a wall and you hang up all the pots to grow the produce. And it's not as energy intensive at all, but still considered vertical farming, which can also expand in a gigantic building that is like 1 story to like 16 stories or higher. I would like to advocate this action of vertical farming by bringing this idea to my local government, such as the mayor of my residential area. And if they like it, I could take it to my governor or a private business entity that like the idea and that can benefit from indoor vertical farming. I would write a proposal or an informative paper explaining how this sort of concept to grow food would help. I would include the cost that would come with it, how they could profit off of having an indoor vertical garden, how they can save space and become independent of grocery stores to a certain percentage, or fully independent and sustainable from external food sources. Thank you very much. We talked about vertical gardening. We talked about how it can save space, and we talked about how it can save resources for places who really, really, really need the food. Thank you.